for paper. What a great deal. That was the first bankruptcy. And ever since that point, we have been proceeding down the road of an exponential debt curve whereby there is only one possible conclusion of an economic system set up on an unsound and unsustainable basis, which is bankruptcy. Not just for the government, but for all the people as well. And so the federal government went bankrupt, and every time it's gone bankrupt, it's transferred more of the assets of the American people over to the international bankers. And because the American people are not aware of the nature of ownership, the nature of titles, the nature of sovereignty itself, we allow that to happen. A deed is not title. You do not have title if you have a deed. You can pay your mortgage for 30 years, and you will not own your property. You only have a deed. A deed is not a title. A title is the land patent. It's called an allodial title. You lost the allodial title the minute you collateralized your land and borrowed money and put up your land as security against it. It's a condition of every bank contract that the allodial title reverts to the federal government as a condition of every bank contract and mortgage in this country. But you didn't know that. Go ask the title insurance companies. They know, but they won't tell you. They scream at me and hang up the phone every time I call them and ask them, please tell me about allodial titles. Don't you ever call me again. Because they're engaged in monumental fraud, that's why. Because they've deceived you out of your title. You can get it back by updating your land patent. One of the supplemental books that I offer is on allodial titles and land patents. And there is a process there where you can declare your land patent and rewrite the legal description of the original land patent, file it with the county recorder's office, and it'll put one more line of resistance between you and any foreclosure. It's not absolutely 100% guaranteed because the government doesn't obey the law. Okay? They just make them. So, sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. But the only way they will, ultimately, is if we practice it. If we want to reapply the American system of law, we've got to use it. We've got to dust it off. It just needs to be used. Every day, everywhere you are, everywhere you go, and with every government person you come into contact with, you've got to remind them who you are. I'm not just this, schmuck here in line waiting to sign your form. I am your employer. I am the sovereign people out of which you got your job, and you are subject to the law as well as I am. And make sure you remember that, to tell them that. There is no government immunity in the constitutional republic that we will rediscover in this country. They will be held to the same standard, if not a higher standard of performance than we are, because they are our supposed representatives, and they better well uphold the law. So the allodial title is one way to protect your land. There are other ways, of course, through trust structures and other means. If you have assets, property, multiple properties, rental properties, then an allodial title may not be satisfactory or sufficient. You may need to organize your affairs in a business trust or some other complex trust structure. Common law trusts are offshore. There's a number of options. There's at least 145 different types of trusts. But you've got to think trust, and you've got to think of having the legal protection, the same types of legal protections that the power structure has enjoyed for thousands of years, that you just are beginning to be aware of, that if you want to hold on to the little piece that you have, that you're going to have to start thinking in these terms. Otherwise, someday, the piper will be at the door, and they're going to take away what you have, and you won't have any recourse at that point. It'll be more difficult, let's put it that way. So every time the federal government has gone bankrupt, it's transferred more of the assets. In 1995, the international bankers own it all. There isn't any land in this country, there's no national parks and forests, there's no birth certificates, no corporations that are not owned lock, stock, and barrel by the international bankers. The titles, are owned. They've been transferred as collateral to the international bankers, these stocks and bonds and securities and all of that. So let's talk a little bit about the nature of the currency system, because this will help to clarify why it is that we're going bankrupt, and we are bankrupt. It's because of the nature of the currency itself. This is not a constitutional money. This is only paper, by the way. It's just paper. And it is created by the banks out of thin air. When you write a check and there's no money in the bank, you get a bounce check fee. When the banks write a check and there's no money in the bank, they call it a loan. That's the difference between us and the banks, okay? And so, there's roughly $7 trillion of electronic money floating around out there right now. Electronic deposit accounting ledger pieces, that's all these are. This is only for accounting purposes only. This isn't money. It's not an asset. It's a debt. It is only a convenient way of depositing or writing negotiable instruments on these electronic, fictitious paper money systems.
Let me have it if you don't think it's money.
What's that?
If you don't think it's money, let me have it.
Here, you can have it.
They won't give it to me, will you?
Sure I will.
I'll hold on to it. Now you're getting greedy.
That's right. Now let's watch their greed here.